Good afternoon. I'm here today to talk to you about what we can do to combat impunity, and then more specifically, what we can do in using the law to combat impunity. I work for an organization called the Media Legal Defense Initiative, and we're a London-based NGO that provides legal aid to journalists across the world. Now, first of all, what is impunity? What are we talking about when we talk about impunity? Impunity basically is a failure by states to investigate, to hold to account and bring to justice perpetrators of crimes against, for instance, journalists. It's a failure to provide remedies to victims. It's a failure to ensure the right to know the truth about what happened to journalists. And we've heard from Guy and other speakers today that the figures at the moment are appalling. Last year was the second most deadly year for journalists, and it's mainly freelance journalists, local journalists that are affected by this. And it's not only killings, it's many more crimes than that. It's torture, it's arbitrary detention, etc. And in only 95% of the cases, those that are responsible are never brought to justice. So let me share you some examples with you of how you can use the law to combat this. The first case I want to talk about was also referred to by Guy. It's a case at the African Court on Human and People's Rights. It's the case of a Burkina Faso journalist called Norbert Zongo, and he was found, or his body was found in a burned out car together with 3 other bodies that revealed shot wounds as well. And this was in December 1998. And basically a long time passed since his death. There was an investigation, but it was not really an effective one. It did reveal that probably the presidential guard was involved in his killing. That said, none of the those responsible were actually brought to account. So one person was charged, but he wasn't actually prosecuted, and the charges against him were dropped. So his family could do nothing else than go to a regional court, the African Court. And 16 years after Mr. Zongo's death, the African Court handed down their judgment in the case. And what they said was, basically, Burkina Faso, you were involved in a cover-up. You didn't make a proper effort to investigate. You didn't prosecute anyone. And you basically didn't have the political will to hold those responsible to account. So it ordered Burkina Faso not only to reopen the investigation, but also to pay damages to the families of the victims. And it was quite a large damages award for a human rights tribunal. It was over $1 million, and reportedly Burkina Faso has in fact paid, which is, of course, good news. Then a second example, this is one of my clients at the European Court of Human Rights. Her name is Khadija Ismailova, and she's an Azerbaijani independent journalist. There aren't many left in Azerbaijan, and so she's very, very brave in continuing her work, revealing corruption, which also implicates the presidential family in Azerbaijan. And Khadija at some point was investigating a corruption scandal which involved the presidential family when she received pictures in her mailbox, and the pictures could only have been taken by hidden cameras in her bedroom without her permission. So they showed her involved in sexual intercourse with her boyfriend. And there was an accompanying letter that said, if you don't drop your investigation, you will be shamed. And she didn't. She continued with her work, and indeed she was shamed. Videos were published online. These photos were sent to major newspapers. She tried everything to have this investigated in Azerbaijan, but the authorities obviously failed to do so. So we took her case to the European Court of Human Rights, where hopefully we will get a judgment sometime in the next year. It's slow, but we're getting there. So basically, from the examples that I've shared so far, you can see that litigation only goes so far. You need to obviously also do other things. I mean, you need to have a lot of patience. It takes quite a long time. And then even if you have a judgment, the question is, will states actually comply with the judgment? And that said, even if you have a judgment and the state does comply, these regional courts don't cover the whole world. So for instance, the Middle East doesn't have its own regional court. So in order to be more successful in combating impunity, we basically need a broader perspective. We need to not only conduct litigation, but we need to have an advocacy campaign. We need media coverage. We need training of judges, police officers, officials, etc., etc. There needs to be research so we can put pressure on governments to investigate. And in addition, we also, I personally think, need to change the way in which we see journalists. In the countries where I work a lot, I see that journalists are often treated as criminals. They are prosecuted on charges of criminal defamation, sedition, false news, etc. And this label of being a criminal, this vilifying of journalists, doesn't help change this culture of impunity, obviously. So I would like to end on this note by saying there's a lot we can do, and these are one of the things. Thank you.
You told what you can do from your perspective, but still, the question is, you are working still with countries where there is a legal authority, but what about journalists who are mostly working in war zones? Do you see any perspective there?
The type of approach that I could provide, basically the legal approach, it will be very difficult in these countries, because you start always at the national level and you try to make sure there's an effective investigation. And that in a conflict situation, obviously this is very difficult because the authorities have other things to worry about, etc.
And you just heard the editor-in-chief at the foreign desk of RTL. They say, well, we know who killed our cameraman, Stan Storymans. It was the Russians. We have clear evidence of that.
Yeah.
Now, naturally, that's something that the Dutch government isn't reporting on anymore, or is not active anymore with getting the results out there. What should you do then? Is the only way for journalists to look into the story and then the story stops?
No, I think there's more you can do. I think you can, for instance, you can raise awareness at an international level, try, for instance, to get the UN Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Expression involved, try to involve international NGOs, try to keep the case being reported on through different channels, and try to keep the pressure on in that sense, if that makes sense.
Yeah, very clear. Thank you very much for your time.